Conclusion, cliffhanger, 400 to 600 words. The days that followed were quieter than I expected. Too quiet. Morning light filled the office again, washing everything in pale gold, as if nothing had changed. Desks were occupied. Phones rang. Laughter drifted from the break room. Routine wrapped itself around me like a disguise I wore too well. He treated me exactly the same. That was the problem. In meetings, his voice was measured and neutral. His eyes never lingered on mine for more than a professional second. When he addressed me, it was always in front of others, always precise, always safe. Anyone watching would have sworn nothing had ever happened. But silence can speak louder than words. Every time our paths crossed, I felt it, the unspoken weight between us. A pause before he answered my questions. A subtle tension in his jaw when someone mentioned late nights or loyalty. I began to notice how carefully he controlled himself, as if one wrong move might shatter something fragile. And me, I was unraveling. At my desk, I caught myself rereading emails he'd sent, searching for hidden meanings that probably weren't there. I felt guilty for wanting his attention back, ashamed of missing something that had never truly existed. Nights were the worst, lying awake, replaying that moment in his office, wondering if it had meant as much to him as it had to me. Or if I'd imagined it all. One evening, a week later, the elevator doors opened and I found myself standing alone with him inside. The air felt too tight, the space too small. The doors slid shut with a soft thud. Neither of us spoke. I stared at the glowing floor numbers, my heart pounding. I could feel his presence beside me, controlled but tense, like a held breath. Just before my floor, he said quietly, "Are you okay?" The question caught me off guard. I turned to look at him. His expression was unreadable, but his eyes searched mine carefully, like he was afraid of the answer. "I don't know," I admitted. The elevator slowed. He nodded once, as if that confirmed something he already feared. "Neither do I," he said. The doors opened. I stepped out, but before they closed again, our eyes locked for a brief, dangerous second. Something passed between us, regret, longing, restraint, all tangled together. Then the doors slid shut. That night, I received an email from HR announcing a potential restructuring. New reporting lines, possible transfers, nothing specific, but enough to stir anxiety across the office. And something else. The next morning, his assistant told me he wouldn't be in. No explanation, no timeline, an unexpected absence. I sat at my desk, staring at his darkened office across the floor. My chest tightened with questions I couldn't ask. Had he pulled away to protect us both? Or was this his way of regaining control? As the hours passed, I realized the truth was more unsettling than either option. Whatever had started between us hadn't ended. It had only gone underground. And as I watched the office lights flicker on one by one that evening, a single thought echoed through me, quiet, persistent, impossible to ignore. When power, desire, and silence collide, who decides what happens next? Because somewhere behind the closed office door, something was still waiting. Introduction, 400 to 600 words. The morning began like every other. Muted sunlight filtered through the thin curtains of my apartment, pale and hesitant, as if the day itself wasn't sure it wanted to begin. The ceiling fan hummed softly above me, steady and familiar. I lay still for a moment longer than usual, staring at a small crack near the corner of the ceiling, counting my breaths. In, out. Routine kept me safe. I showered, dressed, made tea I barely tasted. Outside, the street was already awake, vendors calling out, traffic building in slow waves, life moving forward without waiting for anyone to catch up. I liked that about mornings. They didn't ask questions. By the time I reached the office, the weather had turned strangely calm. No rain, no wind, just a heavy stillness hanging in the air, pressing down on the glass building like a held breath. Inside, the air conditioning hummed, fluorescent lights flickered on, and everything slipped neatly into place. Desks, screens, smiles that didn't linger. I nodded at colleagues, exchanged polite greetings, sat at my desk. My fingers moved automatically across the keyboard, muscle memory guiding me through tasks I'd done 100 times before. From the outside, I looked composed, focused. Inside, I felt hollow. My eyes drifted, against my wall, toward the glass-walled office at the far end of the floor. Empty. That shouldn't have mattered. He was often in meetings early in the morning. Still, a strange unease crept in, settling just beneath my ribs. I checked my watch. Too early to overthink, I told myself. Too early to imagine meaning where there was none. Yet I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. Mr. Adil Khan had been my boss for nearly a year. Precise, controlled, always 2 steps ahead of everyone else. He rarely raised his voice, rarely wasted words. When he entered a room, people straightened without realizing why, including me. I told myself my admiration was professional. Respect earned, not desired. That explanation had worked for a long time, until it didn't. Until the glances lasted half a second too long. Until silence between us felt heavier than conversation. I shook my head slightly and refocused on my screen. Then I heard it, a faint sound, like a door closing somewhere above us. Too soft to matter, too ordinary to notice. Yet my pulse quickened for reasons I couldn't explain. You're imagining things, I thought. Still, I checked my inbox. Nothing. Hours passed. Meetings came and went. His office remained dark. People whispered about deadlines and targets, but no one mentioned his absence. That was what unsettled me most, how easily the world continued without him. By late afternoon, the calm began to feel unnatural. Like the pause before bad news. I found myself replaying conversations in my head, reading meaning into memories that were safer left untouched. Why did silence feel louder than his presence? As the day dragged on, a single thought pressed against my mind, persistent and dangerous. What if today isn't just another routine day? I leaned back in my chair, eyes fixed on the empty office, my reflection staring back at me through the glass. And for the first time, I wondered, when control disappears, who is left standing? Climactic moment, 801,200 words. I didn't sleep that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw his office light glowing against the rain, heard his voice asking questions I wasn't ready to answer. By morning, my body felt heavy, my thoughts tangled. I told myself it would pass. That daylight would restore the rules I understood. It didn't. At the office, everything looked the same, white walls, glass partitions, the soft hum of computers, but the air felt different. Charged, like the moment before a storm breaks. I caught myself looking toward his office again and again, half expecting the door to open, half dreading that it would. He didn't call me in that day. That absence unsettled me more than his attention had. By evening, the rain returned, heavier than before. Most people left early. The floor emptied slowly, lights flicking off one by one. I told myself I should leave too. I even shut down my computer. Then my phone buzzed. A single message. Come upstairs. No name. No explanation. I didn't need one. My heart pounded as I rode the elevator, each floor number lighting up like a countdown. I could still turn back, I thought. Press the button. Walk away. But my finger stayed still. The elevator doors opened to the executive floor, silent, dim, almost reverent. His office door was open this time. The light inside was low, softer than before. He stood by the desk, jacket on, as if he'd been about to leave. You came, he said. I shouldn't have, I replied honestly. He nodded. Probably not. That agreement should have made it easier to leave. Instead, it pulled me deeper into the moment. The door closed behind me again, sealing us inside the quiet. You didn't talk to me today, I said, my voice tight. I wanted to see what you'd do without me pushing, he answered. That word again, pushing. I crossed my arms, defensive. This feels like a test. It is, he said calmly. But not the kind you think. He stepped closer, not invading my space, but close enough that I could feel his presence. I became painfully aware of my own breathing, too fast, too loud. I'm your boss, he continued. That matters. It complicates everything. Relief flickered through me. Then we should stop this. Should, he repeated, studying my face. But will you? The question hit harder than any accusation. I looked away, my reflection caught briefly in the glass wall, uncertain, exposed, trembling. I don't know, I whispered. I feel like I'm betraying something. My job. Myself. He didn't touch me. That restraint made it worse. Desire doesn't disappear just because it's inconvenient, he said softly. But acting on it has consequences. Silence wrapped around us. I felt torn in two, one part craving the certainty of routine, the other aching for something honest, even if it was dangerous. I've never done this, I admitted. Never crossed a line like this. He inhaled slowly. Neither have I. I looked up at him then, surprised. For the first time, his composure cracked. Just slightly, enough to see the man beneath the authority. Then why now? I asked. Because control isn't about force, he said. It's about choice. He stepped back, giving me space. An invitation and a challenge at once. If you stay, he said, it has to be because you want to. Not because of me, not because of my position. My mind raced. This was the moment. The edge. Every instinct warned me of the fallout, gossip, regret, power imbalances I couldn't undo. Yet my body remained rooted to the floor. I took a shaky breath. And if I leave, then this ends, he said simply. No questions, no pressure. The rain thundered against the windows, louder now, as if urging me to decide. I stepped toward the door, then stopped. My hand trembled. I turned back to him. You already changed something, I said. You can't take that back. His eyes softened. Neither can you. We stood there, the space between us charged with everything unsaid. He reached out slowly, stopping inches from me, waiting. Asking without words. I closed my eyes, and nodded. He didn't touch me, not yet. Instead, he rested his hand against the desk beside me, close enough that I could feel the warmth of him, the restraint holding him back. That pause, that control, made my chest ache. This doesn't make us right, he said quietly. I know, I replied. But it makes us honest. The lights flickered again, briefly plunging the room into shadow before returning. My heart raced. In that flicker, something shifted, an unspoken crossing of boundaries that could never be undone. The door behind us remained closed. And as the storm raged outside, one terrifying thought echoed through me. Once you step into the dark, how do you ever find your way back? Falling action, 600 to 800 words. The room felt smaller after that. Not physically, but emotionally, as if the walls had shifted inward, holding us inside a moment that neither of us knew how to name. The storm outside continued its relentless rhythm, rain striking glass, thunder rolling low and distant. Inside, everything slowed. He stepped back first. That simple movement changed everything. The space between us returned, but it didn't feel empty anymore. It felt charged, like a wire humming quietly after being touched. I became acutely aware of my own body, my shallow breaths, the tension in my shoulders, the way my hands curled and uncurled at my sides as if searching for something to hold onto. This is where it gets complicated, he said at last. His voice was steady again, professional, but something underneath it had shifted. I could hear it, feel it. I nodded, unable to meet his eyes. Guilt crept in slowly, spreading through my chest like cold. I thought of the version of myself who believed life was neatly divided, work and personal, right and wrong, safe and dangerous. That version felt naive now. I don't know how to act tomorrow, I admitted. I don't know how to look at you like nothing happened. He exhaled quietly, running a hand through his hair. Tomorrow doesn't have to be decided tonight. But tonight already felt too heavy. We moved around each other cautiously, like strangers learning new boundaries. He straightened a file on his desk that didn't need straightening. I adjusted my jacket, suddenly aware of how late it was, how empty the building must be. You should go, he said, softer this time. The words sounded like a dismissal, but his eyes told a different story. They lingered on me, searching, questioning, perhaps wondering if he'd gone too far or not far enough. I walked toward the door, every step deliberate. Halfway there, I stopped. What happens now? I asked without turning around. There was a pause, long enough to make my chest tighten. Now, he said carefully, we carry this. Quietly. I nodded, even though he couldn't see it. Quietly, like a secret, like a weight. When I finally opened the door, the hallway lights buzzed faintly, too bright after the dimness of his office. I hesitated one last time, my hand still on the handle. "Did you plan this?" I asked. "Calling me up here?" He didn't answer right away. "No," he said finally. But I didn't stop it either. That honesty lingered with me as I stepped into the hall. The door closed behind me with a soft click, final and echoing. The elevator ride down felt longer than before. My reflection stared back at me from the mirrored walls, eyes darker, expression unsettled. I barely recognized myself. Outside, the rain had slowed to a drizzle. The city smelled clean, washed raw. I stood there for a moment, letting the cool air hit my face, grounding me. Yet no matter how deeply I breathed, the tension stayed. At home, I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, replaying every glance, every pause, every word left unfinished. I wondered if he was doing the same. If control, for him, had finally slipped, or if this was just another layer of it. Morning would come, meetings would resume, emails would be sent. We would sit across from each other in daylight, pretending the storm never happened. But something had shifted beneath the surface. As I drifted towards sleep, one question refused to leave me. Had we crossed a line, or had we only just stepped up to it? And if the door was already open, who would be the first to walk through it again? The office always smelled the same at 6 in the evening, cleaned carpet, cold air conditioning, and the faint bitterness of burnt coffee lingering from the last cup someone forgot to finish. That night felt no different. Or at least, that's what I kept telling myself. I stayed late again, not because I had to, but because leaving meant thinking too much. The rain outside tapped against the tall glass windows in slow, uneven rhythms, like fingers drumming with impatience. Islamabad evenings could be like that, quiet on the surface, heavy underneath. I watched the city lights blur through the rain and tried to steady my breathing. Routine was my shield. Emails answered, files stacked, laptop shut, yet my eyes kept drifting to the glass wall of his office. Mr. Adil Khan, my boss, calm, controlled, untouchable. He usually left by 5:30, always did. That predictability had become something I relied on more than I wanted to admit. But tonight, his office light was still on, a warm, amber glow cutting through the dimness of the floor. That was the first crack in the calm. I told myself it meant nothing. Deadlines, meetings, power came with long hours. Still, my chest tightened in a way that had nothing to do with work stress. I'd noticed things before, his lingering glances during meetings, the way his voice dropped when he spoke only to me, the subtle pauses that felt charged with meaning. Things I never allowed myself to name, because naming them would change everything. I leaned back in my chair, closing my eyes for a second. Don't overthink it, I thought. He's your boss. That word alone should have been enough to shut down whatever dangerous curiosity stirred inside me. Then I heard it, the soft click of a door opening. My eyes snapped open. His office door stood ajar now, just slightly. No footsteps followed. No voice called out. Just silence, thick and deliberate. Why hadn't he left yet? I gathered my bag slowly, every movement exaggerated, as if time itself had begun to stretch. My heart beat louder than the rain. I stood, hesitated, then took a single step toward the exit. That should have been it. One step more and I'd be gone, safe inside my familiar loneliness. Still here, his voice cut through the air. I froze. I turned to see him standing in the doorway of his office, jacket off, sleeves rolled up, eyes unreadable. The light behind him framed his silhouette, making him look taller, broader, more intimidating than usual. Yes, I said, my voice quieter than I intended. Just finishing up. He studied me for a moment too long. I felt exposed, as if he could see straight through the careful version of myself I presented every day. A slow smile touched his lips, not warm, not cold, something in between. You work too hard, he said. There was something else in his tone. Something unspoken. As he stepped aside, gesturing toward his office, I felt a question hang in the air. Was this about work, or something else entirely? Rising action, 1,200–1,500 words. His office felt different once I stepped inside it. The door closed softly behind me, but the sound echoed louder than it should have. Or maybe that was just my nerves amplifying everything. The room smelled faintly of his cologne, something clean, sharp, and restrained, like him. The city lights pressed against the windows, rain streaking down the glass in thin, nervous lines. "Sit," he said calmly, gesturing to the chair across from his desk. I obeyed without thinking, the way I always did at work. Still, the word landed differently this time. My pulse thudded in my ears as I lowered myself into the chair, keeping my hands folded tightly in my lap. I reminded myself that this was normal. A conversation, a late meeting, yet he didn't sit immediately. He walked toward the window instead, his back to me, shoulders tense beneath his white shirt. For a moment, neither of us spoke. The silence stretched until it felt deliberate, almost rehearsed. "You've been distracted lately," he said at last. I swallowed. "I don't think so, sir." He turned then, slowly, his eyes fixing on mine. "You hesitate before answering. You avoid eye contact in meetings. You stay late when you don't need to." Each word felt like a step closer, even though he hadn't moved. My chest tightened. How much had he noticed? How much had I unknowingly revealed? "I just want to do well here," I said. It was the safest answer I had. His lips curved faintly. "Do you?" The question lingered. It didn't feel like it was about work anymore. He finally sat down, leaning back in his chair, studying me like a problem he hadn't decided how to solve. I felt small under his gaze, exposed in ways that made my thoughts spiral. Part of me wanted to stand up, apologize, and leave. Another part, the dangerous part, wanted to stay and see where this was going. The rain outside grew heavier, thunder rolling in the distance. I told myself it was just weather. Just coincidence. "You're good at your job," he said. "But you're holding something back." I frowned slightly. "I don't understand." He leaned forward now, resting his elbows on the desk. The distance between us shrank. "You're afraid," he said quietly. The word struck deeper than I expected. Afraid of what? Of him, of myself. I opened my mouth to deny it, but no sound came out. My throat felt dry. He watched me carefully, as if measuring my reaction, weighing how far he could go. "This company," he continued, "rewards loyalty, trust, control." His fingers tapped lightly against the wood of the desk. "Those who surrender to the process rise faster." The way he said surrender made my stomach twist. "I've always trusted you," I said quickly, needing to anchor the conversation back to something professional. He nodded slowly. "Yes, I know." That should have reassured me. Instead, it made me uneasy. How could trust feel like a threat? He stood again, walking around the desk this time. Each step echoed in my head. I tracked his movement without meaning to, my body responding before my mind could stop it. "You live alone, don't you?" he asked casually. The question startled me. "Yes. No family here." "No," he hummed thoughtfully, stopping beside the desk, close enough now that I could feel the warmth radiating from him. That kind of isolation can make people vulnerable. My heart raced. "Why are you asking me this?" He looked down at me, eyes intense but unreadable. "Because it matters." "To what?" "To him." I shifted in my seat, suddenly aware of how quiet the office floor had become. No ringing phones. No footsteps. Just us. "I never cross lines lightly," he said. "But sometimes, lines exist only because we're afraid to question them." I stood abruptly, the chair scraping softly against the floor. "Sir, if this is about my performance." He raised a hand, stopping me. "This isn't disciplinary." That word, "isn't," hung heavy. I stood there, unsure whether to sit back down or walk out. My instincts screamed at me to leave, but curiosity pulled just as hard. I'd spent so long hiding parts of myself, burying feelings under routine and responsibility. Now, standing in his office, it felt like those buried things were pushing their way to the surface. "You don't have to decide anything tonight," he said, his voice lowering. "But I wanted you to know that I see you. More than you think." I laughed nervously. "You're my boss. You shouldn't." "Shouldn't what?" He interrupted gently. "Notice you. Care about you." My mind raced. This was dangerous. Taboo. Wrong in ways I couldn't fully articulate. Power dynamics. Professional boundaries. Every rule I'd ever followed pressed against me at once. Yet I couldn't deny the way my chest tightened when he said he saw me. Thunder cracked outside, startling us both. The lights flickered briefly, then steadied. He didn't break eye contact. "I'll let you go," he said finally. "Think about what you want. About who you want to be when no one's watching." I hesitated. "And if I don't want what you think I do?" A corner of his mouth lifted. "Then you won't come back in here alone again." The implication settled heavily between us. I nodded, unable to speak, and turned toward the door. My hand hovered over the handle for a moment. I could feel his presence behind me, unwavering. As I stepped out into the empty office floor, my heart pounded like I'd just escaped something, or stepped closer to it. Walking into the rain-soaked night, one thought echoed louder than the thunder. What if staying away was no longer an option? And worse, what if I didn't want it to be? And why did my feet feel like they were already moving before my mind could decide?